Just checking that at the same time right here. Yes, it looks like it. Nice. Or does it? Just checking it last time. Does it? Yes, okay, it works. Perfect. So I'm glad to see you. I hope you're safe. My name is Florent. I live in Paris. I work at Neo4j in the drivers team, and today I will resume the series I've been starting for a few weeks now. I started a few weeks ago, sorry, on building an application with Spring Data Neo4j 6. So for the past 2 or 3 sessions, I was working on the front-end part, which was kind of unrelated to Spring Data Neo4j. So I ran into an issue with the tests last time. I tried to figure it out for an hour or so this week, but I couldn't really find what was going on. That's why I decided to go back to the backend for a while, maybe for 1 or 2 more sessions before I wrap this up. And before we start that, I would just want to give you a few news that might be of interest. So the main news, actually the only news, is Nodes 2021. Please register. We want to see you there. We want to see you attend. We want to see you have fun, exchange with participants, learn new things, or even learn existing things, but from a new perspective. So go to neo4j.com/nodes-2021 and register as soon as possible. That being said, not only we would like to see you attend, but we would love to see you speak, and the clock is ticking. The CFP, the call for paper, so that you can access through papercall.io/nodes-2021, closes early next month, 5th of April to be accurate, based on UTC. So if you have anything you want to tell, your story about Neo4j, we would love to see it. So please submit, and the sooner the better. The more chance you will have to be reviewed fairly. So yeah, that's it. I've been talking about this for a while, but I really want to insist on this. Nodes 2021. I mean, the Nodes conference in general is awesome. It's not in presence due to the pandemic, of course, so it's going to be virtual, but it's still fun nonetheless. So we would really love to see you and submit proposals. We're happy to review all of them and maybe see you speak there. And yeah, so let's move on now to the backend again. Let's move on there. So let me just make sure I have all my controls around. Yes. And what I want to do today is a bit different. So the backend has not changed. There is still this API here that I expose. I expose what? The creation of what I call the driver. So if you've not followed until now, what's a driver? It's a project. It's a connector. I think now I finally, after all these weeks, I finally found a better name. I guess connector is the right term. It's not driver. So a connector, which is able to talk to Neo4j. So talk to is a bit vague. That's on purpose because it can involve HTTP, so the existing HTTP APIs, or Bolt, which is our binary protocol. And so as part of my work in the drivers team, I'm doing community outreach to learn what the community is doing, see how we can help them, and also try to make sure they are successful, and in turn that the users in those communities are successful. So I have this API for now. For now, it's very basic. What's a driver? It's a URI. Whether it's official or not, because we have only 5 official drivers in the terms of Bolt. We don't have any official HTTP client because it would probably not make much sense, right? Any language has some HTTP capabilities, so it's it doesn't really need a client, right? It just, if you know how to make a post call or a get call or what have you in your own language, then you probably don't need a client. It's just standard HTTP semantics in there, so that's why there is no There is no clients per se that we offer officially. So official mostly means official Bolt driver in that case. Maybe later there will be some official HTTP driver, but I don't think it's going to happen. And for the official Bolt drivers, as you may know, we have Java, .NET, JavaScript, Python, and Golang. Golang, which is the driver I'm maintaining. And for each of these connectors, so I would probably change the name after the stream, or if we have still some time before the hour ends, I might rename it. It supports one or several transports, right? Because nothing prevents you from supporting both HTTP and Bolt. And even in terms of Bolt, there are several versions possible, because you started with Bolt v1, v2, v3, v4, and then 4.1, 4.2, because Bolt started following Neo4j version, starting with Neo4j 4.0. And so, yeah, basically a connector. So I'm just going to say connector for now. Connector has a URI, usually a GitHub URI, and whether it's official or not, most likely not when it's a community project, and the kind of transport it supports. Then, of course, the idea would be to extend the backend to some other projects, like an object graph mapper, for instance, that is built on top of it. Or library, maybe, that does some things, I don't know, or maybe some integration, framework integrations. I always use the same examples because that's the ones I'm interacting a lot with these days, but like in the PHP world, you would have an integration with Laravel, you would have an integration with Symfony, you would have an integration maybe with Cake PHP, which is another framework. Same for Rails, right? You have a particular way to persist entities, and so you would have a Rails integration for Neo4j, etc., etc. Those are not connectors, but they usually depend on connectors, and that kind of dependency is interesting to see as well in the graph, and for me, right, because no matter what level of abstraction the user is doing, we want to make sure they are successful in doing so. So whether they are using the raw drivers, like Bolt or HTTP directly, or some higher level abstractions, like entities, repositories, etc., I want to track that, contact the author if needed. That's something we could add also to the graph, like the author of those projects, or committers, or maintainers, or what have you. But for now, I've started really, really basic. And this thing is Spring Data Neo4j 6 application. So in case it was needed, just in case I want to be explicit. And so we have this driver API, basically encapsulates the creation of a driver. So it's a connector. And the connector, it's just save. And save is that. And boom, you're done. With Spring Data Neo4j 6, basically, with Spring Data Neo4j or Spring Data even in general, you're done. You declare what you want and you get it. And then, of course, there are testing with test containers. So not rather here, I can start a container with Neo4j, configure my application to talk to it, and then run whatever I want. In that case, I'm pre-saving a transport, which is Bolt. Then I have the supported transport for my connector, which would be Bolt 4.2, which is the latest release currently of Neo4j and of Bolt. And then I would persist this driver, so this connector, which is not official, and which will support Bolt 4.2. And then at the end, when I use a template for saving and find all, because this template is completely independent from repositories, then it should end up being in the database. So that's what the test is making sure of, and it runs in the container. So that's and it's really concise to write. It's really easy because I'm using the test containers and the Gmint5 integration, which makes it even nicer. And so that's what we have. But for today, I wanted to do something a bit different. I wanted to, let me see. I see something here popping up in my screen. I'm not sure what it is about. I want to start defining data migrations because as some of you may know, in Spring Data Neo4j 5, which was built on top of Neo4j OGM, there were some schema and index operations available. The design decision for Spring Data Neo4j 6 has been to remove those kind of concerns completely from the mapper. So in Spring Data Neo4j 6, you will not be able to define indices or schema indices, constraints, etc. So if you had annotations like this, for instance, like @index or these kind of things. So that's something that comes from Spring Framework, but that is nothing to do with Spring Data, so that's completely unrelated. There used to be something like this, but not anymore. And the reason they decided that it's because the indexing, etc., is not, from an application point of view, it's not an application concern. So you have tools. Of course, you can still drive those changes, those database changes, through your application. If your application is the sole one connecting to that database instance, then of course it makes sense to collocate your application and your migrations. However, the design decision is Spring Data Neo4j 6 will not deal with that. So Spring Data Neo4j 6 offers mapping with entities, as we've seen, like this @node, and relationships, of course. It offers different kinds of abstraction for querying Neo4j. So some that are entity aware, some more basics, and the most basic being the Java driver itself, just auto-configured in the Spring context. But you won't see any migration facilities like this @index thing, for instance. And so for now, because I'm obviously biased, because I wrote a Liquibase, so Liquibase I can show real quick, and I did a session on this actually. Recently, a few weeks ago, I did a session on Liquibase, which is an ugly website, but there is a new website on the way. So there is Liquibase to define migrations for Neo4j. There is, so if I look at my colleague's project, which started it before Liquibase supported Neo4j 4. There is also this one. So Liquibase is more or less very inspired from Liquibase. So you have change logs, you have change set, which defines migrations, and you have as many queries as you want. And they will run once by default and won't be run again. Neo4j migrations is quite similar. It's a CL, I think it's a CLI, but it's also an Maven plugin and a Spring Boot starter, just like Liquibase. And it's very similar to Flyway in philosophy. So Flyway is yet another migration tool on the JVM. So Liquibase and Flyway are the two main ones. But more recently, that's just the thing I'm going to use, is Liquibase Neo4j. So what is it? Is the Neo4j plugin for Liquibase. So Liquibase is inspired from, but has no direct ties with Liquibase. Liquibase Neo4j, on the other hand, is just a plugin. So you drop the plugin whenever your Liquibase is, and it will support Neo4j out of the box. So it's not released yet. It's quite new. And as you can see, for instance, so that's where it looks a bit awkward compared to Liquibase, for instance, in terms of XML. Like you would say query, here it's SQL, because historically Liquibase was mainly for relational databases. But apart from that, it works great. And the great thing compared to Liquibase, at least, that because it's just a standard Liquibase plugin, you will get all the Liquibase functionalities for free. And many of them were not implemented in Liquibase because it's mostly been a hobby project of mine, so I didn't really have a giant bandwidth to spend time on. So doing this, I just piggyback on Liquibase and benefit from many, many features. So we're going to do this. And the great thing is, of course, Liquibase is fully supported by Spring Boot. So all I have to do is add Liquibase, so the Liquibase core for the core functionality, and add the plugin. So the plugin, of course, I will have to cheat because it's not released yet, so I will have to install it locally. And then we will be able to define some migrations. But what kind of migrations do I want to run? There are several things. And hi, Asim, by the way, just so your message, hi from YouTube. Welcome here. And so what kind of migrations do I want to run? Well, first, there are a few transports that I already know I want to insert, which is Bolt v1, Bolt v2, Bolt v3, Bolt v4, v4.1, v4.2. Then there is HTTP. And also there is some kind of uniqueness constraints on those. I don't want them to be ever duplicated. So if everything goes well, it's not really going to happen. but you know, if you start doing some mess up some concurrency in there. So what I mean is there is a natural key, so in terms of primary key, so to say, of identifier, which is the HTTP or bolt. So the transport node, the bolt transport node will never be duplicated unless, again, you mess with concurrency. But instead of saying never and not really making sure of it, let's define uniqueness constraints. That's what they are for. So, but again, that's not the job of Spring Data Neo4j 6, contrary to Spring Data Neo4j 5. You don't have any @indexed or any kind of facilities like this. So yeah, let's do that. And I'm not sure what the emoji is. Rocktwi. Sorry if I mispronounce your username on Twitch, but welcome, welcome anyway. So let's start to add Rock Twitch. Okay, thank you. So let's close this. Go back to the IDE, and what I want is to add Liquibase core. So just gonna look around a little bit just to make sure I get the latest version. I've got Liquibase core. 4.3.2 seems to be the last version as of a few days ago, it seems. Actually, as of yesterday, so that's brand new. So all I have to do is basically add this to the class path, and Spring Boot will be smart enough to kick in the configuration, I guess. We'll see anyway if that doesn't work. It wouldn't be my first time trying something that doesn't work in a live stream. But anyway, so I've added Liquibase, that's cool. Then I have to cheat a little bit because the plugin I mentioned, the Neo4j plugin, is not released yet. So I have it locally, obviously, because I developed it. And by the way, if you're interested in supporting it, I'm trying to, I'm actually in a weird branch. So let's go to main, make sure everything is there, and stash the rest. It's not very important. It's untracked stuff. And for once in my life, I'm gonna do something I've not done in a long while, which is Maven clean. It's probably not necessary, but who knows? Install. Those damn three words: Maven clean install. Only to install the jar of the plugin locally, so I can reference it later, and it won't try to download it because it's not available anywhere. Interesting. It's complaining about the version of Java. So just in case, I'm going to force it to use the JDK 8 and just install this. And while I'm doing this, I also need the coordinates because I don't remember. Actually, it's right there, but yeah, so basically this. I will also need to add the plugin to the class path. That way it won't blow up if I try to run some cipher. So, oops, that's a group ID. That's a artifact ID. And because it's a snapshot, it will try to fetch it locally first and then download it if it doesn't find it. But because I'm running Maven install, I'm actually running the test, which I could have skipped, but anyway. And that's purely, actually everything is runtime because I don't need to compile anything, so it should be fine. Just putting runtime for those two because I don't need anything for compilation. So let's wait for install to complete. Yeah, maybe I should have kept, I'm gonna skip the test. So Maven clean install, skip test, or as I call it, this. All right, so it's there, all good. So let's go back to our project. Yeah, I've got a lot of projects starting with admin. Okay, sorry, I'm lost in Windows. So here I'm back with my window. If I refresh, it should build fine, I guess. We'll see. What does IntelliJ says? Okay. Just gonna run a build first. Downloading Liquibase. Okay, good. All right. And so next step is define some migrations, right? So and I will assume the database is empty. Every target database I use are empty. So for that, what do I need? By default, Spring Boot will look into a specific location, which, if I believe what I'm reading right now, is DB folder and a changelog subfolder. So let's do that. So I will need this db/changelog, and then I need to have a file there. However, I'm just going to change the default name because by default it expects a YAML file. So Liquibase reports multiple text formats: YAML, XML historically, XML, YAML, and then at least SQL. So it's just a text file with queries and some comments on top of each query to define the metadata of the migration. But I'm going to use XML. I know it might be a controversial choice for some of you, but at least XML is verbose but easy to read and easy to parse. So for that, I need to tell the auto configuration of Liquibase. I need to use a shorthand property saying something like this. And it's not happy about it, not sure why. Just to make sure, I'm going to reload this. Okay. All right. Still not recognizing it, but we'll see. We'll see. Oh, and by the way, that makes me think of something. I can add those later. Okay, so now I have this Liquibase. Yeah, actually, I can simplify it a little bit. I would probably let me remove the folder. Since now I control the location completely, I don't have to put it in the default. I'm just going to do something like this. Migrations and migrations. Migration/changelog. And let's not use this. Cool, so I'm just gonna need that. And then I'm gonna cheat a little bit. So file, boom, all right. How does it look like? It will look a bit like I've shown. So let me try to find a window again, sorry. Yeah, I have too many things open, it's a mess. So if I go back to Liquibase Neo4j, we have a few examples. Liquibase Neo4j. One example is as simple as something. Where is it? Didn't I? Okay, here it goes. So of course here I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna first add. So it's always a good idea to have some meaningful IDs so we can know what the migration is about. Migration is change set in that case. Uniqueness. So what would it be? Uniqueness of driver of transport node. Oh, so Rock Twitch is telling me the resolution might be too small. I can at least enlarge the font a little bit. Might make things better. Sorry, I forgot to actually do that. So thanks for the comment. As for the resolution itself, I've been using the same one for a few weeks. But yeah, sorry, I completely forgot to make the font bigger. So hopefully now it's better. Thank you, Rock, for comments. And so, uniqueness, what uniqueness? Transport uniqueness. For that, we're gonna run SQL. Again, Liquibase is historically biased towards relational databases, so bear with me. I know it looks a little weird. And so in that case, because I don't remember everything by heart, we're just gonna look at create constraint Neo4j. Boom. Parent administration, unique node property constraints. That's exactly what I want. And that's something like this. Okay, that's perfect. Oh yeah, you can ignore. Okay, so Rock Twitch is saying that the left panel is a bit strange. It's okay. You know what? Let's even forget about the left panel because we're not really gonna need it. So now we have, and it's I've not found a way to actually maximize, I mean, enhance the font on those other parts of the IDE. So yeah, let's ignore it for now. Let's the source that I'm showing should be enough, hopefully. So transport uniqueness, or what is it? So let me have this here and maybe just also open the transport itself. Yes. So I'm gonna move that to the right. I'm gonna go back to this and we're gonna forget the rest. Boom, okay. And so I want to create transport uniqueness, that's just the name of the constraint. On, except I cannot type uniqueness. On what? So the label is transport. I'm just gonna give it a name, assert transport dot value is unique. So for now that should be good enough because so that's the first thing, transport uniqueness. And then what I want to do is pre-create some of them. So transport is just a transport type actually. So maybe I should rename this. And then I need a second one, but maybe let's start with that just to see that the setup works or blows up. And actually, that makes me think. So if I look at this, I have a few changes, of course, Liquibase and stuff. But if I look at my stashes, I believe I have some configuration. Does it work? Git stash. What's the option to show the contents? Let me check real quick. Git stash. Show contents. See what's in stash without applying it. Perfect. Git stash show dash p. Easy. Yeah, so I'm just basically gonna reuse this, which I don't commit, obviously. So I will need to add those back here. So by default, it's connecting, sorry, to local hosts. That's why I've not specified it again. And you know, so Spring Data Neo4j configuration will take care of the rest. I just gave you the username, password, and hopefully that should be good enough. I just wonder how Liquibase will know where to connect, but I guess it will just fail. And if it does not fail, then we'll have this database here. So I can minimize this. Probably have some data in it. I can probably get rid of everything because we don't care. Okay, so now we have an empty database. And so what happens if I start to run the application, it will probably blow up. So let's see what happens. I'm just gonna run this. We probably complain about Liquibase not being able to figure out where to connect, or maybe not. It's like it doesn't even really. So just to make sure, because it doesn't seem to trigger any Liquibase. So let me see. I probably need another dependency that I forgot. That's probably the case. Just to be sure, just write something stupid, rerun. If it does not blow up, then it means it's not reading our configuration, and therefore Liquibase is not running. Okay, so that starts properly, which means, of course, we'll need something else. So let me check real quick. Spring Boot Liquibase. Liquibase starter? Is there such a thing? Da, 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 da. So what do we do? What do we do? Just checking the documentation itself. We need, yeah, I'm not sure. Just checking real quick. Yeah, I might need a starter for the database. So that might, that's a good point. I will probably use, so the thing is, I think to know about Liquibase, and that's probably one of the drawbacks compared to, say, Neo4j migrations, for instance, a project written by Michael Simons. It requires a JDBC driver. But when you think, so JDBC sounds weird for a non-relational database, but it actually makes sense because Liquibase is mostly about relational databases. And the good news is there are actually JDBC drivers for Neo4j. So that's why I could reuse those and build the plugin from there. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to add the JDBC starter, and then I hope that it will start to complain. And again, scope runtime should, nah. Let's see. You know what? Just in case, let's keep things simple for now. I'm just gonna refine the scopes afterward. So I have JDBC, Liquibase core, and the Neo4j plugin. Let's see what happens. It should complain because I've not configured JDBC at all. It still does not. Ooh, that's interesting. So let's try to figure it out without spending too much time on it. Just gonna check real quick something. Yeah, I'm just gonna try that. So sorry, it's taking a little time. I'm just making sure I'm not messing anything up. So I can use, yeah, JDBC starter, that looks right. Thanks, Rock, for for the encouragement. Yeah, except. So I'm reading something, but I don't see what I want to see there, which is a configuration. So let me see. Yeah, I guess, okay, so I guess I will need, should be Spring but Liquibase. So does it work better? Yes, so first thing that was missing is this. So yeah, it's interestingly, let's see what happens just with that. My hope is to finally see the start fail and just configure the data source to point to Neo4j. So it still does not fail, so that's not cool. But then if I do data source, name whatever I want, data source.url. So it will be bold. Actually, should probably be something like this. Localhost. And then for now, I'm going to be sloppy and do the same. Which means I also need, no, actually I don't need to bring the JDBC driver because it's already it's already there through the plugin. Username, Neo4j, and the password, very secure password, as you can see. All right, so let's see again. So I see you just sent me a link. I'm trying to open it without, yeah. Real quick switch game. Yeah, I will try. Let me know if the current view is not good enough. So if I add this configuration, knowing that I have the starter, nope, it still doesn't care. Maybe because I forgot. Oh, I know why. Because I forgot to reload the project since I changed the scopes. So now the JDBC should be in there. So let's try again. Now I'm happy. Now I'm seeing stuff. Now we're talking. Failed to configure a data source. No embedded data source could be configured. Yes, because I'm missing one last thing, which is to basically set the JDBC driver. So yeah, finally we're getting there. So I can close this. I don't care about this. Thank you. Bye bye. And then finally. Let me check real quick. What's the name of this? I guess if I try Vault or data source. So that's the standard one. And what do I have in my class path? I have Bolt Neo4j data source. So that looks good to me. So that should probably be fine. Copy reference. And finally, Spring data source. Driver. Oh, driver class name. Yes. Oh, even better, there is autocomplete. So I don't need routing. So routing is needed when you have several machines in a cluster to know whether to route a request to the leader of the cluster or to a read replica. I have only a single instance running here, so I don't really care. That way, I'm just going to use the standard one, which is Bolt driver. So hopefully with all of that in place, I have my JDBC auto configuration in place. So Liquibase, so that means that Spring is able to create a JDBC driver bin that Liquibase can use for its own purpose. And hopefully that should be enough. Let's see. So I'm seeing some each data source here in there. Liquibase is doing some stuff. Custom SQL executed, change set migrations, changelog, run successfully, which is nice. It seems to finally have worked. I was a bit skeptical that I would fix it, but it seems to work. And so let's see. So if I look at my statement here, I have a constraint. So let me see real quick. I think there is a procedure called db constraints. So if I go back to my database for a minute, yeah, maybe not too big, but if I do something like all db constraints, I should see I should see this transport uniqueness. I have a lot more things. That's because of the plugin for its own constraints, because it creates, and I will come back to that in a minute, but at least mine is there. Mine is there, so that's nice. And actually, you will see that the graph is not empty now. Why? Because Liquibase, so Liquibase with a relational database will create two tables, one for locking to make sure only one Liquibase is actively running against a given relational database instance, and one for history purposes to make sure it does not run something that has already run, in a nutshell. There are, of course, some nuances in there, but that's more or less what it does. So the same idea applies to the Neo4j plugin. It will insert a graph, a history graph in your database. And also, as you've seen, my change set just create a constraints. I have, however, nodes in my database. So I have this change set here, which represents what has been executed. So it's probably too small for you to see, but in the attributes, I can see the changelog name, I can see the ID, etc., etc. And then there is a changelog itself, which is linked, to many change sets. So here I have it. I'm happy. So I wish I could improve the views. That's a great point. Oh, I'm not using the right. Yeah, I can do this a little bit. Not sure how easy it makes things. So let me rerun this now that I have zoomed in. Except now I'm lost. Let's rerun this. Yeah, okay. So yeah, as I was saying, so I can't try. Yeah, okay, here we go. So actually, I learned something. I always forget to. I never try to zoom, but it's actually feasible and it reacts. And actually, there were some icons here, so I don't know how I missed it. But anyway, and the change set, as you can see, as I was saying, has some, the name, the file name it originates from, some more data in there, like the version of Liquibase it's been using, where it comes from, whether it's been executed or not, etc., etc. So this is the history graph for now. We have only a single migration within a changelog. A changelog is a list of changes, and change set is a number of queries run. Great, I'm happy about this. So next step is to populate transports, because I don't want to do this with it. I want my application to assume that all the available transports are there when the application starts. So transport creation in that case. And if we look, so now you must be careful, of course, between the queries you're writing and so the queries you're writing and the way you mapped it to your entities, right? So in my case, I have a node with the label transport, and the attribute is called value, and the attribute is either this or this. So basically, the stringified version of the enum, which is just that in quotes, HTTP or bold. So transport creation in that case is, I will do two things. I will create transport with value, which will be HTTP. And same thing for bold. And if we look, bold is also all in uppercase due to enum naming conventions. So, all right, so let's rerun the application and we should see that happen. Let's see. And let's try again. Okay, and you can see that two queries have been run, not three, because I have three queries, right? I have the create constraint, I have the transport, and I mean the transport for HTTP and the transport for bold. So Rock Twitch is asking me whether I use Retina, so yes, but I don't use OBS, I assume you're asking about. I'm using something else. So I'm not using OBS. But yeah, I'm using Retina. So I hope that answers your question. And so as I was saying, on only 2 queries were run. Why? Because this one is already in the history graph. So the plugin is clever enough, the Neo4j plugin for Liquibase, I mean Liquibase in general actually, because that's the standard behavior from Liquibase. Liquibase is smart enough to not rerun things that have run already, which is nice because we don't want to create constraints to run again, because it would fail. You cannot create a constraint, the same constraint twice. And if we look at my database now we should see, if I just match transports for now, there is already auto-completion, so that's usually a good sign. Yay, I've got HTTP and bold. Nice. And if I try to get everything from the database, so any kind of nodes, oops, I'm using pre-Neo4j2 syntax, prehistoric syntax, I would say. So nope, let's do this instead. Let's here see, now we have a little more. So we have a second migration. So if we look in more details, it's called transport creation, and it's been added there. Description is usually concatenation of generated stuff, so it does not look great, but that's a standard behavior from Liquibase because it's SQL tag. So by default, description is just SQL, and we have 2 of them, so SQL. So, and Neo4j decided to pick Neo4j desktop decided to pick description for some reason, whereas actually, I think we can configure this somewhere. I don't remember how, but we can configure which property we want to display by default. And for Liquibase change sets, ID, the user-defined ID property would make more sense. And so I think the last issue we might have, so if we look at the log a little bit, I might be wrong, but let's see. It works well, right? I have my migrations, everything is cool. However, Spring Data is bootstrapping everything before the migrations actually start, which is not great, because I want the database to be ready. I mean, the contents in there through the migrations, I want them to be ready before Spring Data starts. And to be honest, I'm not sure what's the best way to do that. So I'm just gonna openly Google for this. I'm just gonna Google for this. Let's do it. So Spring Data. Let's do something like this. Wait for Liquibase. After. So let me see if I can find a good way. So maybe it's actually detailed in the official docs I was checking a bit earlier. So I know there is this depends on, this kind of dependency between Spring beans. So I could use something like this. Let's look at the Spring Boot document. Oh, no, I want a Spring Liquibase documentation. Let's see what kind of thing we can configure there. Let's be curious. Spring.liquibase.clear, checksums, context, nope. Change log table, no, I don't want to change this, I don't want to change this, I don't want to change this, I don't want to change this. Enabled, yes. Labels, nope. Labels is it's not to be mixed up with Neo4j labels. Those are not related. Oh, okay, I could have done that instead of using the JDBC thing. Interesting. So let's try that. That's not the problem I wanted to solve, but I like those. So instead of going through that, let's URL. Let's try it again. Basically, this username, user actually, just user, and password, I guess. Yeah, that's a bit better. Is there a driver maybe then Liquibase? Driver class name, yes. So it's a bit clearer. It probably doesn't change anything at the end because it's doing the same thing, but at least the intent is clearer, in my opinion, because we see that this configuration is for Liquibase and not that we're configuring a random data source out of nowhere. So let me try this. We should not see any new migration running because they've all been inserted. So let me restart the application. And maybe in the meantime, I will find a genius idea on how to have Spring Data wait for something. Fail to configure your attribute is not specified. Really? Really, really? Come on, I just give you this. JDBC, Neo4j, bold. That's a bit strange. So what happens if I get rid? Let me try something. Can I get rid of that completely? And rerun the application. So let me first reload everything and then rerun. Yeah, no, it's still complaining. Spring data source. Yeah, no, wait, there is still, okay, I know what's going on. Let me clean this, because let me rebuild it then. Oops. If not, I will just revert back to JDBC, but I would love to avoid it. Okay, class not found. Okay, so yeah, that means I actually know I need the starter. I need it. But the configuration will be a bit clearer. So yeah, it's a pity that I have to add this myself, but well, that's life. So let's do it again. And hopefully, maybe I will see the same error. And if I see the same error, I will just go back to the JDBC configuration. It's not the end of the world. It would have been nicer not to have to do this. Bottom of your error attribute is not specified. Okay, well, okay, I give up for now. You win. I'm just gonna go back to that. And that, yeah. Just gonna go in, yeah, just gonna go with the JDBC route for configuration. Not sure why the other approach doesn't work, but at least this one should work fine, yes. So yeah, what I would love to see now is a way, as I was telling, to tell Spring Data to wait and let me see if there is a smart way to do this. I have my application now. Yeah, I'm not sure I can do much. That will be for the next stream, I guess. That might be for the next stream. Let me look for this maybe a little more. So let's say GPA because it's probably easier, probably more resources online for that. Wait for operations to complete or something like this. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not using Hibernate and Flyway, but the problem is the same. So what's the answer? Nah, well, that's not great. Nope. So they basically say, so that's Flyway specific. Okay, yeah, I might have to wrap this myself. That's something I would love to avoid, but yeah, okay. You know what? We'll stop there for today. At least we've got some migrations with the Liquibase plugin. It might not be as elegant as I would love, but for now it's good enough. So just as a small recap, what we've done is configuring, so that was already kind of there. Just the standard stuff to test Spring Data Neo4j where to connect, knowing that by default it will connect to both local hosts. That's why I didn't rewrite it here. I could actually, if I wanted to be super explicit. Actually, I think it's URI, right? Yes, by default. That's the same as this, basically. So that's for Spring Data Neo4j, that's for Liquibase. And for some reason, the Spring Liquibase URL, username, password, and driver class name equivalents of this do not work. Something I will have to dig in. And once we have this, the auto configuration takes care of the rest, figures out how to instantiate the data source we need for Liquibase, and then Liquibase can use the JDBC driver to connect to the data source and execute the migrations I've defined here. So in that case, also the tag name is called SQL, it's actually Cypher. First I create a constraint, then I create two nodes here, and that way I'm sure they will not be duplicated in my database. The only issue left, and I will hopefully find a solution next week, is to make sure that if we look at the start log, you see the bootstrapping Spring Data Neo4j repository, finishing Spring Data Neo4j repository scanning, etc. This happens before Liquibase actually runs, and it's not something I want. So I would like to invert the order, basically. So I will see whether I have to write some code explicitly for this and enforce the ender myself, or if there is some configurable way to do this. And I believe next week might be one of the last on the series on Spring Data Neo4j for me. One thing I will probably cover as well is migration. And I will probably have a dedicated session for that next week. I might cover the fixes I might have found after today. And then I would like to talk about how to go from Spring Data Neo4j 5 OGM to Spring Data Neo4j 6, because some things have changed. Migration is not always straightforward. That's how I'm gonna cover it. And so thank you for following. Thank you, RockTwitch, for all the suggestions. But again, I'm not using OBS, so all the OBS tutorials won't be of help for me. Next time I will remember to enlarge the font before starting. I usually do it. I completely forgot this week. So thanks a lot. Yeah, the reason I'm not using OBS is just way too complex for me, whereas I go to restream.io and click, and I'm done. Thank you, merci as well, RockTwitch, for following. If you have any other questions, you can find me on Twitter quite easily. And yeah, that's it. So let's talk about, hopefully I will have found some fixes before next week. Talk about those real quick, and then talk about Spring Data 5 OGM migration to Spring Data Neo4j 6. And then after that week, after next week, there might be an extra session showing some cool stuff that has been released in release candidates or milestones, I don't remember, that the Spring Data Neo4j team has been working on. But yeah, after those 1 or 2 sessions, I will stop there and stream on something probably more centered around Golang, the Go driver, and the Golang community of users in the Neo4j world. So thanks everyone, and see you next week. Bye bye.